All right. So here on the Fantasy Football Fellowship podcast, we do a weekly breakout, and so basically it's a devotional thought where we look to the Bible and look to what God says and how it relates and parallels to a fantasy concept, and so this month, of course, is draft month, and over the next, I guess it dips into the start of September. But all of us are, in draft mode. And for those of us crazy enough to be in multiple leagues, we've got different drafts every night. And as I've become a father of two and a husband, trying to draft multiple nights of the week is very challenging, very challenging. But it's a fun time of year for sure. And the fun outweighs what I'm about to talk about. But the reality is when we step into a draft, there's also a level of pressure, stress, intensity, but that's what we love about it, right? Because most of us, I talked about yesterday on the Unpacking It podcast, I was cut from my middle school football team. So my playing days were over early. So fantasy football, it's like, wait, I can still feel like I'm a part of things. I'm still in. And I, even though I stink at actually playing the sport. So this is right up my alley. Me and all the other fantasy nerds. This is the best. But what happens is when we go into the draft, we take it really seriously. And if you're listening to a fantasy podcast, you must take this seriously as well. But what happens is when we're on the clock and there's 1 minute to go and we've got 1 minute to make a decision, it's like, all right, who am I going to take? Who am I going to take? All of a sudden, you're starting to feel like, okay, I don't want to draft the guy that's going to get hurt early and ruin my season. Ooh, I don't want to reach for this guy. Ooh, if I don't take a tight end now, am I going to miss on a tight end? If I don't get a quarterback, am I going to be left with Ryan Tannehill as my guy? And if you've listened to this podcast, you know where that landed me last year. But that's the mindset and what we're dealing with, and all this is happening all at once. Then throw in on Sunday night, we had some technical difficulties because we had so many people drafting at the church. We had internet issues, and it was just like it was chaos. And I'm the commissioner of technically of all three leagues, but then also my individual league, and I had never used the app we were using, and it was chaotic. And then I was supposed to be on the clock, and one of the times I panicked. It was craziness, and David Montgomery was my auto draft pick. Wasn't who I was targeting, and he ended up being my fourth running back, which isn't terrible. But anyway, I'm just painting this picture of the chaos of the draft. We love it. It's awesome. It's a blast. Yet it's also there's some anxiety, there's some stress and pressure all mixed in. And so of course you and I can relate to this in our own lives as well. And I would even say this time of year is that way. Many of us are either, starting up a new season of work or at school. People have kids with they're starting back up for the fall semester and all that sort of thing. It's all going on now. Activities are starting up. Small groups at church are starting up. All of it is happening after a somewhat relaxing summer for most of us. And so in many ways, now there's this rapid pace and it almost feels like we're on the clock. I got to get my kids here. I got to finish this. I got to do this. Oh, how am I going to manage this and this? And for us that are crazy with multiple drafts, it's like, how am I going to do this draft and that draft and put the kids to bed and all that kind of thing. And all this is going on. And we all have these challenges, these seasons of life, the weeks, the days. And the truth is though, we can't thrive or even survive in the mayhem and in the chaos unless we rely on Jesus for strength and peace. It's the only way to get through these types of situations. And so we can't necessarily, prevent the stressful situations from happening, although we do control sometimes all the things that we say yes to in life, and I'm guilty of that. Um, but whatever the chaos is in our life, sometimes it's brought up on our own, sometimes it's just outside, forces and things that are going on, that people have put on our plate or whatnot. But these are the moments where we have to pause. We have to invite Jesus, who's already with us, but invite him to take over and say, all right, Lord, I can't handle this situation. It's nuts. I need to think clearly. I need your peace and I need your strength. And I'm not sure we pray this prayer in the middle of a fantasy draft, but even in the middle of a fantasy draft, it's, hey, let's stay calm. Let's, it's just fantasy. Let's remain calm. But when it comes to real life, it's asking Jesus, who is our peace. He gives us peace when we cling to him and rest in him and trust him. And so let's allow these Bible verses to encourage us in difficult times like this. Second Thessalonians says, now may the Lord of peace himself give you his peace at all times and in every situation. The Lord be with you all. So every situation, that may even be fantasy. So we'll throw that in the mix. If we're playing fantasy with meaning and purpose, with the right intentions, maybe we could pray that prayer as well. But also a prayer from Isaiah 26:3. You will keep in perfect peace all who trust in you, all whose thoughts are fixed on you. And so we can remain in peace when our thoughts are on Jesus, when that's who we're looking to, that's who we're focused on. Psalm 29:11 tells us the Lord gives his people strength. The Lord blesses them with peace. And so whatever draft room we find ourselves in today, high gear stress and situations that cause us to feel like we're on the clock and we're nervously going back and forth on what to do and nervous about, no, I don't want to make a mistake. I don't want to make a mistake. Let's remember that Jesus gives us peace and strength to overcome the craziness, to be the calm in the middle of the storm. That's who he is for us. He's the rock. He's our foundation. We just have to remain focused and pause long enough to say, all right, Lord, I'm getting crazy. Things are going nuts. I need you. The simple prayer of I need you. And so we can confidently rely on him for wisdom to make wise decisions, even in the midst of sometimes chaos. Again, back to the fantasy, we got to make wise decisions when we're on the clock in fantasy. We got to make wise decisions when we're on the clock, so to speak, in life, and ask him for his will, his direction, his guidance in our lives as we rely on him. So you can unpack that today. That's this week's Fantasy Football Fellowship breakout. And if you want to be able to read these throughout the season and also have discussion questions, a challenge, a prayer, all of that is available on fantasyfootballfellowship.com for our members. And so it's $10 for the whole season, and you get access to all of that content. And we encourage you to participate individually, but then also get your league involved. Invite them to be a part of league meetings and meet weekly to discuss these types of topics. And so, you can discuss the topic of chaos and what each of you are going through in life and encourage one another and say, hey, man, I'm struggling. I'm juggling with multiple kids and marriage and work. And how are you doing it? Oh man, I'm struggling here, but I'm finding some success here, and God's really working in this area of my life. And here's some changes that I've made. You help one another, but these have to happen in group settings. And so what better small group than a league, a fantasy league? So that's why we developed Fantasy Football Fellowship for you and your league. So encourage you to do that throughout the season. Again, fantasyfootballfellowship.com.